Proverbs chapter 6, we are going to be looking at verses 12 through 19. And we have here, especially in verses 12 to 15, we have a description of the wicked man. And Proverbs, especially these first 9 chapters, but throughout Proverbs, we see various descriptions of the foolish man, the lazy man, the angry man, the evil or wicked man. And Proverbs tells us what they are like. It shows us some of their characteristics so that we will learn it and be able to avoid them. Part of wisdom is being able to identify that which is contrary to wisdom and not be infected by it, to avoid it or make other right steps. It is the wise man that looks ahead, sees the evil, and avoids it. And so what we're going to be looking at this afternoon is a description of the wicked man. And this is something we still do somewhat today. We have various warnings that come out. You might see on television an advertisement warning that avoid this, a particular scam. Or if you have a bank, I know our bank statements, they actually have on there various descriptions. We will never do this or this or this. Do not give your information out if somebody asks you for this particular stuff, because we're never going to ask for it. We know that there are those that call us on the phone, that send us emails, send us text messages. I'll tell you the best one of those I've ever gotten, and it almost worked. I got a random text message that said, "Do you want to come over for chicken curry tonight?" And I thought, boy, that's a good scam. I'd sign up for that one. Yes, I'm all in for supper. But we get these things that we know they're scams. We've learned they're not real. We don't call them, we don't click, we don't reply, we don't give information. And our world is full of threats like that. We can talk about the same thing. It's not a particular concern up here, but you go into a city. There are concerns. There's ways of navigating, walking through the city and identifying who's around, who are you approaching, what buildings are you walking by, what alleys are you walking by, where's the lighting, where's the lighting lacking, and noticing things and learning, okay, this is a potential threat. And learning how to respond. Ruth and I, we taught our daughters, here's how you respond to certain threats. And don't be afraid of extreme violence. Respond aggressively, quickly. And because it's a necessary part of living in a world where we know people are hostile. Not everybody is, but there are some. What Solomon is teaching, what Proverbs is teaching, is how to identify the morally and spiritually hostile. In this particular example, they are also physically hostile. They're opposed to and seeking to mug you, is what it seems as if it is. It's a scenario where there's a street gang looking to mug someone. But the more important issue is not how do you avoid getting robbed. It is how do you avoid the spiritual loss of associating with these wicked men. So that's what's going on. So let me read verses 12 through 15. It says, "A worthless person, a wicked man, walks with a perverse mouth. He winks with his eyes. He shuffles with his feet. He points with his fingers. Perversity is in his heart. He devises evil continually. He sows discord. Therefore his calamity shall come suddenly. Suddenly he shall be broken without remedy." So what we have here, this is not one person, but it is a stereotypical description of a wicked man, and it provides really for moral profiling. We've heard about criminal profiling and the opposition to racial profiling. There is a validity to a moral profiling, that we look at someone and say, they have these traits, and I can therefore profile them as a wicked man, or likely to be a wicked man. That's what this is giving to us, is this moral profile that in some of the morality is manifest in their behavior, but it ultimately all traces down to their heart. And so the description of them first is he is worthless. And verse 12 tells us he is a worthless man, and literally is a man of Belial. And Belial, it speaks of one who is of one author has said he's of a shoddy moral character, prone to wickedness and simple nastiness. He is devoid of good sense and moral compunctions. Interestingly, we recognize the name Belial as a name for Satan. That actually he is called Belial because of this use of worthless. So the men aren't named after Satan. Satan is named after these kind of men. This word predates its use in terms of Satan. But it is somebody who he's worthless. He's a ne'er-do-well. He's a do-nothing. He's no good. He is, if this was the 50s, he'd have a white T-shirt, have a cigarette pack rolled up in the sleeve. He'd be leaning against the bricks in the street corner and just standing there, doing nothing. That's what this is describing. He's completely worthless. He's a blight on society. He takes away from, subtracts from social good, does not add to it. He's worthless, and he is wicked. That's how he describes him. This is a worthless man and a wicked man. So how do we know this worthless, wicked one? We know it by their deeds. He walks with a perverse mouth. He speaks deceitfully. And so the perversion here is not speaking of immoral speech. Rather, it is speech that is crooked. It cannot speak the straight truth. So remember, when you see this word perverse in Proverbs, elsewhere in the Old Testament too, it's talking first about that which is crooked. Not again, the immoral or sexually perverse as we might use it today, but that which is just not in line with the straight and true. So we have in Proverbs the upright man. He is straight. He is on the level. The crooked man, the perverse man is crooked. He is out of whack, out of line. He's out of truth. He is not walking straight, and he is not speaking straight. And we have this in this description. Now, I'm going to change the analogy a little bit. It's not just moral profiling. Now we're getting an artist sketch. You know, you've maybe seen those on the news. They have a police artist come in and they sketch a man. This is, we think the suspect looks like this. We're getting a sketch of what this man looks like by what he does. His mouth is crooked. He secretly signals, and this is confusing. Just that simple. It's confusing. He winks with his eyes. He shuffles with his feet. He points with his fingers. All of these things are indicating he is passing information to somebody else. So if you picture a city street, and this worthless, wicked man stops you in the street and begins to talk, what he's going to speak are lies. But what he is doing as he is talking to you is he is scoping you out to see if you are a likely target. He's wanting to know, are you a good victim? And as he's talking, he's saying whatever nonsense he wants to say because he wants to know, is this person, does he have other friends here? Somebody going to back him up if we jump him? How much money does he have on him? Does he have a cell phone on him? What kind of watch is he wearing? They're checking out the victim, the target, to see what they can do. And then as he's talking, when he begins to learn and to finally decide, this is the right guy. So this guy that's talking to you is the scout. Once he figures out, this is the right guy, he begins to make these secret signals. He winks. He's got somebody behind, and when you're looking this way, he's winking over there. And then he starts making, motions with his feet. There's really a secret symbols that he's doing. He's making a motion and maybe saying, we're going to go over here. And then maybe you're distracted and he's pointing with his fingers. That's what it's describing. It is this really these signals, secret signals, between this wicked man and the gang of wicked men. Because as soon as they determine that you're the right one, he selects you as his victim, he points at you, maybe points where they're going to go, maybe he's convincing you, hey, can you show me where this is? And so he walks off in one direction, and he's pointing to his buddies, hey, run around the block and meet us right here. And that's that whole process is this one just coming, looking for a target, looking for someone, in this analogy, that they can mug. And Solomon is, I think, very intentionally using this picture of a street gang, just a group of thugs that are looking for someone to rob. And he's saying the morally wicked are the same way. And then he tells us their disposition, what's really going on in their heart. There's perversity, again, crookedness. They're not walking in what is right. So when you see this one who is lying, or you see one who, today we still talk about shifty people. Probably not quite as common, but the shifty individuals. And you look at them, there's something off. There's something off about the way they carry themselves, the way they interact. There's something not right. Part of what Proverbs is saying is pay attention to that. Again, especially in the moral realm, because if his mouth is speaking crookedness, you can bet there's crookedness in his heart. If he can't speak the straight truth, it's because there is no straightness within him. There's no uprightness within him. He schemes evil. He devises evil continually. Again, that's all the pointing and the shuffling and the winking. This is part of that evil scheming. It's part of this plan that he's laying out. In the end, he starts conflict. He sows discord. So now he jumps out a bit from the analogy, from the gang, street gang, and the group of muggers, and to now there's discord, there's strife. I mean, we can see certainly a gang jumps somebody, there's conflict. But he's really pointing more towards relational conflict, strife, discord, arguing, division between individuals. So one of the ways that we know this worthless wicked man, one of the things I would say most apparent in our interactions with people is their words. Do they speak the truth? Can we trust them to speak the truth? And do they leave a trail of broken relationships in their wake? If there's somebody that thrives on conflict, or that somehow manages to stir up conflict, because certainly there are people who themselves don't get involved in the conflict directly, but they're working in such a way that these two people over here are at odds with one another. If you could peek behind the scenes a little bit, you realize that person right there, that worthless one, is actually the cause of this conflict. If there's somebody that, and honestly, when I talk to somebody and I hear a litany of, I was involved in this conflict, and it's of course all their fault. And then I was involved in this conflict, and of course it was all their fault. I get this list of this conflict, this conflict, this conflict, and I see this talking sometimes with pastors. And I talk to guys maybe just never met him before and started listening. He starts telling me, I was at this church and then I had to leave because of this, and at this church, and they were really terrible. I had to leave because of that, and I was at that church, and you wouldn't believe how bad those people were, and I had to leave. And it's a tale of constant conflict. And I start thinking after a couple times that this is what's going on, that the problem's not the churches. The problem's probably with him. He is doing something that is stirring up this conflict. He's not a peacemaker. And we hear that, and that's a scenario that I'm interact with more than anything else. But we certainly see this in lives. We see this in relationships. I'm willing to bet that you talk to somebody in town, maybe a neighbor, maybe somebody you see in the store on a regular basis, and as you get to know them, you talk to them, what you hear from them is stories of conflicts. Always fighting, mad at their mother about something, not talking to their sister because of that. The government has done this wrong to them, and they're upset about that. And again, it's a litany of all the relationships are broken in some way. That is a mark that what we're dealing with is a wicked person. And they are one ultimately to be avoided because of their destiny. If we walk with them, we're going to share destiny with them. Sudden calamity. That's what's coming for them. Sudden calamity. And again, we see this. You interact with people, you hear their stories of, again, perpetual conflict, or you're talking to somebody and you just know they're not telling you the truth. They're making stories up as quick as they can think of them. Their end is so many times is a suddenly cut off. They find themselves homeless, just out of the blue. They're without any resource. Suddenly they're in jail. Sometimes it is suddenly they die. But there is a calamity that comes on them very quickly in many cases. And because they have been walking down that road. It's not that they've been living this life. They've been walking the way of holiness. And suddenly out of left field comes this calamity and hits them. They've been walking the way of wickedness. And they have hit the pitfall, the trap that's there. It's inevitable when you walk the way of wickedness. They can't see it. It's sudden to them because they're not thinking at all about their choices. But you can, if you're really attentive to them and their lives, if you really are interacting with them about what's going on, then when the calamity happens, it's not a surprise to the observant outsider because they've been going that way. So when you see someone who perpetually is unfaithful to his wife, are you shocked when she divorces him? And he may be, but his calamity comes suddenly on him because he's oblivious. That's what he's talking about, is this sudden calamity and irreparable harm. He will be broken without remedy. I hope you remember chapter 1, verses 26 and 27. Because wisdom says to the fool, because you ignored me, I will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your terror comes. When your terror comes like a storm and your destruction comes like a whirlwind, when distress and anguish come upon you. She tells us, wisdom says, it's coming like a whirlwind. It's out of nowhere. And wisdom's not going to help. You ignored her long ago. Your harm, you're broken. And there's damage done that can never be repaired. And again, we see this. We see this. You look at the drug addict. And somebody may for years walk through with, if you will, a mild addiction. But if you're watching, you know the havoc it's wreaking in their life. And it is, day by day, doing irreparable harm. And there does come a point, it may be decades down the road, but they see finally the result of their addiction in their brain and in their choices, in their thinking, in their abilities, because of the irreparable harm that's done to them. I was actually listening to an interview here not too long ago with a completely wicked man. And he was describing his life, and was describing he was a big partier, just always drinking, always partying. That was his life. He was on top of the world. And then, this is probably 30 years later, suddenly he's actually has basically a form of dementia because of his alcoholism. His liver is no longer working. His brain is poisoned. He is a madman for a time. And now his body has suffered. His brain is broken. He's suffering stroke, suffering loss of ability, loss of, again, intellect and speech because of a habit of wicked choices that suddenly irreparable harm. And the way he described it, it was rather sudden. Again, an outsider would have said, and he did say, he had friends telling him, you're destroying your life. And he didn't see it. And then boom, one day, he's almost died. He has almost died, or has died on the operating room table. And they were having to revive him over and over and over again just to try to keep him alive because of the incredible damage he has done. And so we should be looking at this and seeing this is wickedness, and this is going to end in misery. As Christians, we have opportunities there to give compassionate warnings, to say, look, what you're doing, you can't keep treating your spouse like that. You're destroying your relationship. You can't keep doing that. You're going to do irreparable harm. You're never going to recover. You need to stop now. And calling others to walk in repentance. Calling them to walk in wisdom. Wisdom not only tells us we reject her, that there is sudden destruction, she also promises that length of days is in her hand. What a promise. Length of days is in the hand of wisdom. If we will walk in wisdom, we will have a long life. And so we have, in this description of the wicked man, we see his mouth, it is crooked. We see his eyes and his feet and his fingers. We see his mind. He's a scheming man. We see his lips, they are perverse. We see his end. It is calamity. And then we come to the next section. 7 abominations. Verse 16, these 6 things the Lord hates. Yes, 7 are an abomination to him. A proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that are swift in running to evil, a false witness who speaks lies, and one who sows discord among brethren. There is, and maybe you noticed as I was reading, there is a strong overlap, there's a large overlap between the description of the wicked man and these 7 abominations. It's very intentional. But he's describing this evil man now with this list of things that God hates. And so it's one, God says this one is abominable, the one who has these traits, these inner desires, inner thoughts, and outward actions. This one is abominable to the Lord. And so we have, described this abomination. I think I've mentioned this before, but this is something which is detestable and revolting. There really is in this term a sense of God's stomach is turned by these things. These are revolting actions. It's not just the moral offense of I don't like that. There is a visceral reaction, an emotional gut reaction. I'm sure every one of you have something that you look at and you want to just, if you see it or if you're around it, it just makes your stomach turn. Or maybe you actually do throw up when you're around, maybe you go and see too much blood and you throw up. I know some people do that. It's that kind of thing that just twists your stomach and you can't stand it. It is sickening to you. That's what's going on when we talk about this abominations. It is things which are sickening to God. We recognize that God's not literally sick. God doesn't have a stomach to be turned. They're called anthropomorphisms. We are speaking of God in human terms and to help us understand God's perspective. And so that God does literally hate. He detests these things. They are morally repulsive to him. He wants nothing to do with them. They are morally offensive. Ultimately, these are getting down to his morals. So this isn't reacting to the sight of blood. This is reacting to the sight of wickedness, sin. So if you think about that, when God looks at a proud man in the same way that most people respond to the person sitting beside them throwing up. And I don't want to be overly graphic, but that's the idea that this is communicating. It's an utter revulsion because that is just so vile. It's offensive. I don't want anything to do with it. The smell of it makes me sick. I don't want to be around it. That's what it's an abomination. This is really some of the strongest possible language. And he says 6 things, yes, 7. Here, this is the completion. This is this idea of, and we're going to see it at the end of Proverbs where it says 3 things, yes, 4. This adding to is an emphatic thing. It's a completeness, but it is an emphasis on this is the fullness of this abominableness. It's the completeness of it. I think that verses 16 to 19 are a chiasm. I know I've explained this before, but I'm going to explain it again because I think in this passage it is chiastic in its structure. And we're going to see this structure again throughout Proverbs. It is an important structure to recognize in book of Proverbs and in Hebrew literature. And so that it is used for emphasis. It's very much a Hebrew thing. You don't see it so much you don't see it in the Greek writing except for when they're borrowing from Hebrew. So it is a Hebrew device that is used to emphasize something. It is characterized by an inverted parallelism in which the first item is matched by the last, the second by the second to last, so on and so forth. So it's sometimes described, and I've described it as a funnel-shaped structure. And so you have, and to clarify again, the inverted parallelism, you have the first line, and in this case, the first item, the 7th item match. They are parallel in some way together. The second item and the 6th item are in some way parallel to one another. The 3rd item and the 4th item are likewise parallel, and in this case, the 3rd item and the 5th item are in some way parallel, and in this case, the 4th item has no parallel. And what happens in chiasms is usually the center point or points is the main point. This is where the emphasis comes in, is that basically, and I've got an arrow shape on your outline, because that arrow is pointing to the point. And so in this structure, it's not necessarily, not that anything doesn't matter, but the first or the last things, they're not the most important. The middle thing is the most important. All right, so what we have here is a statement of what the Lord hates. Michael V. Fox says, a sense of what disgusts God is essential to the fear of God. Remember, the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. Fear of God is the fruit of wisdom. So if we're going to walk in wisdom, we need to understand what God hates. And we have now this emphatic description of the severity of God's disgust at this behavior. So the first thing he hates, the Lord loathes the arrogant eye. We know what that is, just pride. The Lord hates the lying tongue. The Lord hates violent hands. The Lord hates a scheming heart. He hates feet that hurry to do evil. He hates the lying witness. That is, that false witness. He hates the creator of strife. So we have the proud one that just looks with disdain on everybody around him. We have the violent hands and the feet that hurry to do evil. They harm the neighbor. In fact, the fifth one there, he's not just content to do evil, but he longs for it. He runs after it. He is, and then we have the sixth one. He lies about another, and particularly a false witness in Scriptures is in court. So when you see the idea of a false witness, and you see the commandment, thou shalt not bear false witness, it's actually a command against perjury. And I think it encompasses lying in other settings, but its first focus is speaking evil of somebody in a courtroom setting to give a false witness about them. And you can imagine the harm that does to the person that is being lied about. Somebody's on trial for something and you say, yeah, I saw him do it, when you didn't. You're risking at the very least, his liberty, if not more than that. And the question, though, maybe you're already thinking, is what, as I've said, these are all parallel. I think 2 and 6, those are very obvious, both focusing on lying. 3 and 5, the actions, here are hands and feet working to do evil. Proverbs 28:25 says, he who is of a proud heart stirs up strife. And that's exactly what Gene said. He who is of a proud heart stirs up strife. So the proud man is a strife monger. The strife monger is arrogant. His disdain for everybody else it causes him to stir up conflict. He doesn't care. And the emphasis here, really, it's not on the body part. That we have an eye, tongues, hands, feet, heart, again, tongue again. It's not on the body parts, it's on the action. And there's the attitude here, but we have the action of the violence, running to evil, speaking lies, sowing discord. We have as well the false witness. He's a kind of person. It's not just something he does. It's kind of person that he is. And God hates those who do wickedness, especially that wickedness which brings harm to others. And these really are, they're not sins in private. None of them are. They're sins that have a public effect. They impact others. We have here whose actions, words, and attitudes flow out of his heart. He is one that he has a heart that devises wicked plans. Because of that heart, because he has a heart that described earlier as perverse, he longs for these things. He loves them. He wants them. And the Lord loathes that one who has that scheming, wicked heart from which flows all of his wicked actions. And this particular section of Proverbs, this chiasm, points us to the reality that Proverbs has already said and will say over and over again, that what is in our heart is what shapes our behavior. The issue is trusting in the Lord with all your heart, guarding your heart with all diligence, because out of it are the issues of life. Can we see a person's heart? No, we cannot see and in some way say, yes, I definitely can say this is what's in his heart. Can we know what's in a person's heart? We can't see it with that level of definiteness, but can we know it to an extent? Absolutely. How do we know it? How do we know what's in his heart? Exactly. I'm glad somebody's paying attention. By his actions, his words, and his attitude. So that when you see one who is arrogant, you know there's wickedness in the heart. When you see one who is deceitful, you know there's wickedness in your heart. When you see one who is doing injury to another, You know there's wickedness in his heart. And I won't go over there, but that's exactly what Jesus says. Matthew chapter 15. It's exactly what he says. Out of the heart comes all of the things that defile a man. Now, I do not think, and let me say this as well, because if you've been reading any commentators on Proverbs and doing any study on your own, most of them are actually saying that the verses 12 to 14 and 16 to 19 are emphasizing the fact of sowing discord. And so they say, then because of that that's the conclusion of both sections, that's the emphasis. I do disagree with that because of the chiastic structure. That it moves the emphasis from the sowing discord in the second section to the scheming heart. And so what he is describing, what the emphasis is this who this person really is. He is one with a perverse heart that loves evil. Therefore, he does all these things. So what do we do? How do we apply these truths to our lives? First, we stay away from the wicked. Stay far from them. We see this, and we should recognize people by their actions and their attitudes. And we do not cut off ministry from them. And we can't say, that's counterproductive to say, well, he's arrogant, I'm not going to minister to him. He's a liar, I'm not going to give him the gospel. He needs the gospel. But we should be saying, he is a proud man. That's very obvious. I can't hang out with him. We're not buddies. There's a problem here. And that problem of his behavior or his attitudes is revealing a heart problem. And if I walk in the way with the wicked man, I am going to end up like him. I'm going to end up in the same destiny that he has. And so we don't walk in that way with them. We call them out of that way. So our interaction with them is not shunning them, but it is calling them to repentance. And so that relationally, or if you will, as friends, there is a distance between us and them, that we do not pal around with them because of that. Secondly, we do not harm others because God takes it personally. But just look again in these abominations: hands that shed innocent blood, feet that are swift in running to evil. God detests these things. And when we harm people, we are harming the image of God. God hates it. We see again the call to guard your heart. It is the source of your attitudes and your behavior. And so there's a personal diagnostic here. It is, if I'm seeing in my own life pride, I'm seeing in my own life a tendency to say or to do harsh, mean things. If I'm seeing in my own life a tendency to shade the truth, to tell lies in some form or another, it's sourced in the heart. So you're looking at your own life and you're saying, what's going on? Or you're recognizing, I said this, I know I shouldn't do this, and convicted of the Holy Spirit that this is not right. I shouldn't say this, shouldn't be like that, shouldn't think that. The answer is to address the heart. No, we don't ignore the behavior. There's a right answer in saying stop it. But while you're stopping it, you're also correcting the source. You're going to the heart to find out what's wrong there, so the heart can be corrected, so the behavior, the attitudes, and the words can be corrected. So we guard the heart. We work to keep our heart from getting in that condition, because we know from that heart flows everything else. And beware, because sin that infects the heart poisons the entire person. There is no such thing as a sin that remains only in your mind or heart. It's not possible. Scripture is plain that the sin in the heart will manifest itself in words, actions, and attitudes. It will. And so beware, because it's going to come out. And with that, the other side, as we've already alluded to, is take notice of wicked behavior, because it does indicate an evil heart. If we see somebody who's habitually sinning, habitually doing this one thing, we should recognize that there is evil present in their heart. This is flowing out of them, of who they really are. And part of what this section tells us is that we cannot say that someone who perpetually is committing wicked deeds, we cannot excuse them and say, well, he has a good heart. No, he doesn't. He has a perverse heart. That's why perversities are coming out. We cannot excuse behavior by pointing to the heart, because it's the heart that's the root of the behavior. And so we take notice of it. We don't gloss over habitual wickedness. And when we see someone who just, there's no concern, no evidence that they recognize what they're doing is wrong, there's no concern to change it, to do what is right, we should not just gloss over it, because it indicates a deeper problem. And we should seek to address it. If they will not hear, they will not receive admonition or exhortation, then that's where we go back to the first one and stay far from the wicked. We pull back relationally so that we're not being infected by the wickedness of the person we're interacting with. We're not walking with them in their wickedness.